And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Tomorrow morning's flying weather graphic showing much of the same that we've seen. A lot of IFR here out over the Bering Sea. Marginal VFR in along the southwest coast, Bristol Bay, and Kodiak Island. Some IFR now along the eastern and southeastern slopes of the Alaska Range through here. And also some IFR now for tomorrow morning. Western Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, in across the northern Panhandle, and then on down toward Wrangell, otherwise marginal there into the Gulf of Alaska for the afternoon. Marginal VFR for all of the southeast coast there, so a little bit of improvement off to the east and north there, but still some IFR here for the North Gulf Coast, northern Prince William Sound. Areas of marginal VFR in from the Tanana Valley here down toward the Alaska Range into the Talkeetnas, Kenai Peninsula marginal, down to Kodiak Island. Interior, not too bad, mostly VFR all the way up to the Arctic coast and on out to the west coast as well, and at least eastern Norton Sound, VFR. IFR for the Aleutians, south side of the Alaska Peninsula, and just about all the Bering Sea. And then for the Wednesday morning, not much change out here. Still a lot of IFR out over the Bering Sea, but staying west of Nunivak Island, and maybe up to about Gamble, but Savunga, marginal VFR in toward the coastline, but the interior, especially north and west of the Alaska Range here, all the way up to the Arctic coast, VFR. IFR, a little more extensive now for Wednesday morning here. Talkeetnas up along the southeastern and eastern slopes of the Alaska Range, right on down into Kamishak Bay, and possibly into southern Copper River Basin, as well as the North Gulf Coast and the northern and eastern southeast coast. And again for the afternoon, that burns back here to marginal VFR for the Panhandle, North Gulf Coast, and improving though along the Alaska Range, and then good VFR for the interior up to the North Slope and out to the west. Still a big chunk of IFR out here over the Bering Sea and affecting most of the Aleutians. And for the thunderstorm graphic for today, Monday, best area here, scattered thunderstorms there from the hills north of Fairbanks on up across the Yukon Flats toward Arctic Village and then westward into the northern Koyukuk Valley. Otherwise isolated here in the surrounding area there. And then the forecast for tomorrow, that lifts northward a little bit, so best chance of seeing some thunderstorm activity would be here right around northway to Fairbanks, northward and across the Yukon Flats, all the way up to the eastern North Slope there, and into the central Brooks Range, cutting across the northern Koyukuk Valley. And the outlook for Wednesday, that expands a little bit here southward, covering all the Tanana Valley, so almost down to the Alaska Range in toward Northway and in along and just south of the mid-Yukon River Valley areas. All of the Koyukuk Valley now could see some isolated thunderstorms and a chance up into the eastern Brooks Range again around Arctic Village. And for passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, another VFR day coming up for both passes there in the Brooks Range. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, marginal for rainy, windy, also looking pretty marginal for the day Tuesday, as is Isabel. Optimistically, call it VFR for Mentasta tomorrow and also for Tanita. Portage, marginal VFR, possible IFR, eastern entrance there over toward Whittier, Passes Canal area, and Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels here, 10,000 feet, pretty warm up here to the north, continuing there for the North Slope Brooks Range, Upper Yukon Valley, and then sloping down to about 6,000 feet here from the western Gulf of Alaska up to the northwest there into the northern Bering Sea. And for icing, nothing that significant. Some areas of possible isolated moderate icing here, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, into the eastern Aleutians, and then maybe up into the southwest interior and northern Bering Sea here, St. Matthew Island to western St. Lawrence Island, and then possible mixed icing here with a convection and shower activity here over the south central areas on up almost to the Yukon Flats there, as well as a band here over the central southeast coast. Moving on to the jet stream, upper level low pressure here in the Gulf of Alaska, another one back near St. Lawrence Island, high pressure to the northeast, so southeast winds 60 to 65 knots right through the interior, but the stronger winds here south of the Aleutians, just south of the Aleutians, you can see 105 to 120 knot westerlies there. And for 9,000 feet, same pattern here. We've got westerly winds across the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians, with the strongest winds just south of the Aleutian chain. Up here on the other side of the trough axis, southeasterlies maybe up to 40 knots. And east-southeast 40 knots from the western Brooks Range out to the western Arctic coast. Otherwise, pretty light elsewhere. And 3,000 feet, not too bad wind-wise, very light and variable here over the interior into the Gulf of Alaska and from Kodiak Island to the Panhandle. Southeast, 35 knots here over the northern and eastern Bering Sea, and then west-northwesterlies, 35 to 40 knots across the Aleutians. Turbulence with those winds, looking at possible isolated moderate turbulence here for the entire Aleutian chain. Otherwise, none of any significance elsewhere in the forecast area.